Welcome back, pod people, to another episode of Cinema Demori Podcast with your host, Kay Jacob from IPA Sessions. That's right, I've taken over once again, and I'm of course joined by
Justin
and Chuck.
Thank you for letting me take over for this episode. This was my selection for this movie. We are covering 1973's Lady Snowblood. Before we get into anything, I want to know, what did you guys think? How did you feel about this one?
I mean, I liked it so much that I would probably take a bunch of stuff and make homages out of it and probably make it like a 4-hour movie and split it in half.
Just like Tarantino did, and we'll get to that. Did you enjoy this one, Chuck? I figured this one might be more up your alley.
It's always a good one.
Nice.
We talked about it during the earlier episodes that one of my favorites is Lone Wolf and Cub, which is based on a manga by the same author, so...
Yeah, right? That was actually news to me. I didn't realize that. So Lady Snowblood started as a manga, and I apologize. Chuck, do you know the author's name of the manga who created this and Lone Wolf and Cub, which I didn't realize was also a manga originally as well?
I have to read it because I certainly would not memorize that perfectly. It's Kazuo Koike.
Koike, yeah. I know he's super popular in Japan. He's probably really popular amongst American folks that are big manga fans. I'm just kind of like... I just kind of browse manga. I don't really get hardcore into it, but I do enjoy cool ones. And I've heard of his works. Like, I know a lot of the stuff that he's done, which I was impressed because I didn't realize, like, some of this stuff, it was in the 60s. Like, I didn't know, like, I knew the show Lone Wolf and Cub was around in the 70s, but I didn't know he'd been making the mangas since, like, the 50s and 60s. So that was kind of cool to me to realize that. But, of course, this is directed by Toshiya Fujita. The only other movie I really know by him is Lady Snowblood 2, A Vengeance Song of Love. Or excuse me, A Love Song of Vengeance. I'm not really familiar with his other films, but there is one that I kind of know of and I want to see called Revolver. It was his last movie that he made in 1988. It looks pretty cool. But I have noticed when I was looking at IMDb, all of his films that he's made, they all seem to have the same kind of style and influence. They're either a love movie or like vengeance themed. Some of them are kind of like, I want to say they look like they could be exploitation films, but again, I haven't seen them, so I definitely have a fun little rabbit hole to go down later on. And you know what's great too, we've talked about the main actress, Lady Snowblood. We've talked about her before because it is the Scorpion herself, Miss Miko Kaji, the female prisoner 701 Scorpion. She returns to your podcast back on Cinema Demori. We have female Scorpion. I love it.
Hell yeah.
You do love your women in prison.
I love our women in prison. No, I'm a huge fan of hers. I like a lot of her movies, this being one of them, of course. You know, I didn't realize, but I should have known better, but she's like basically the starlet of Japanese cinema for many years. She even did the theme song to this movie that was composed and sung by her. So like, I didn't realize she sang a lot, and like, she apparently stopped singing for a while, and when she signed on to do this film, she decided to do a song for it. And I love the music. It works really well. It adds to that exploit. And it was cool because I was doing some research on it, and I found out that at this time in her life, after the Scorpion movies, she was like, I'm stepping away from these exploit films. But then because she's friends with the writer of this movie and the director, who basically knows how to work with her really well, and kind of begged her, like, please do this with me. She's like, okay, for you I will. And she kills it, knocks it out of the park. And then, you know, we have some other cast members in this that you might recognize, like Masakai Daimyo. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that, but he's a familiar face from Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla for my kaiju brother over there, Justin. And of course, from the Ultraman, the 1980s series that they had, he was the chief. And then there was also a return from the Sword of Doom. We had, I forget his name, but he played the priest that trained her. He was the actor from Sword of Doom, because I was watching, I was like, oh, that's the old man. So it's kind of cool to see him make a return as well. So it's a nice little tie-in that these movies keep having that tie-in with everything. Where to start with this? That's the real question here.
Let's start from the beginning.
Start from the beginning? I like that. Should we just do another fun, simple synopsis from IMDb?
Yes.
The short or the long version?
Yeah, see what they have to say.
Listen, let's see if they have a nice, short, swift, and to the point version. A strikingly beautiful young woman is trained from birth to be a deadly instrument of revenge against the swindlers who destroyed her family. That sums it up pretty nicely. I mean, it's a lot deeper than that. Something I like is there's like this supernatural element to it, where in the opening scene, the mother is giving birth in a prison cell, because here we are, women in prison, back to it. She had been wronged, which you'll find out later on as the film progresses, that this woman had been wronged, and her husband and her son had been murdered, and she had been sent to prison after a brutal rape as well. So in prison, she like has sex with as many men as possible to get pregnant so that she can give birth to a child to carry out her vengeance for her. And of course, she wanted a son, and she gets Lady Snowblood instead, and basically says, you know, I'm sorry for what I'm putting onto you, but she kind of like curses the child. She's like, you're going to be a demon. You're going to be my spirit of vengeance. You know, she entrusts this baby with all the women she's in prison with to raise her and train her to be her vengeance and to become one with the sword and death. It's pretty epic. It's like extremely epic. Something I noticed too is the overall theme of this movie. It has the same style and theme as anyone playing the role of Snowblood could have easily been a man. Usually these parts were done for men roles. Normally you would see a man going through this storyline, but instead they made it a woman. And I want to say we're kind of lucky to have had Miko do this role, because she's probably the first female action star. We probably wouldn't have Michelle Yeoh or Sigourney Weaver, you know, these badass women roles, if it wasn't for Lady Snowblood first. This was the one that kind of broke the mold. So I thought it was really cool. And of course the manga does the same thing. And that's what I was told drew a lot of people into the manga, just like with the movie, is the fact that like you're watching these badass scenes and these clips, and the story is very relatable. And normally it's a story that would have been told through a man's point of view, but instead they went through the route of a woman. So I thought that was really cool that they went about doing that. Justin, I want to bring up something here. I want to give you a moment to well, actually, you know what? Let me get there. It's not ready.
Yeah, don't give Justin a moment.
No moment for you yet, Justin.
It deserves no moments.
I don't need a moment.
I don't see any other way of getting there. Let's just do it now. Tarantino heavily inspired by this. In fact, I would say there are scenes in here, specifically the ending of Kill Bill, 100%, almost shot for shot, stylized and copycatted, but in a way of love, to mimic this film. Specifically in Kill Bill at the end with Lucy Liu's character, the way she's dressed, the walking out in the snow, everything is very much a nod to Snowblood. To the fact that when Lucy Liu is killed at the end of Kill Bill, as soon as she hits the ground, that music kicks on. It's the same song from Lady Snowblood, sang by or performed by Lady Snowblood. And of course, Miko herself makes a cameo in Kill Bill. She's one of the performers in the background during the Crazy 88 scene where they're like doing that crazy cut around, and like you have the performers on stage and they keep looking around like what's going on out there. People are going crazy. She's one of the performers in that crowd. So I thought that was really cool. So like he definitely was inspired by this film. You can see a lot of nods to it. You can see things in the fact that Kill Bill itself, the story of Kill Bill, is very much inspired by Lady Snowblood.
It absolutely is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no hiding it. It's pretty much the exact same revenge story of just taking a few people out. Still's the same shot of looking up at her captors, even though it's really her mother's perspective in that shot in this movie. The training, going back to the insane training.
Getting in the barrel. The barrel's my favorite. That just looks so ridiculous. They just roll that down a hill with like a ponytail sticking out, and then every time it hits a bump, she like launches.
It's like taped inside the barrel.
Yeah, it's
the gore, the blood squibs alone is so over the top in Lady Snowblood, but Tarantino does the same in Kill Bill. He has those great over the top scenes whenever there's Uma Thurman slicing into the Crazy 88s and they're just blood shooting out everywhere. That's totally an homage to this. It's the over the top blood spray. And what's cool is it's kind of an exploitation film, but it's done in a very serious manner. This first movie, and I'm saying first movie because there is a sequel, which I also love. The sequel is great, but it's almost like a completely different style. It's a completely different story. It is a continuation, but this is supposed to be kind of like it was filmed to be a one-off because it was apparently strongly followed close to the manga, and it pulled heavily from that and made sure it did right by that. But I love the over-the-top kills. Like, it's so epic. Like, the way, I think there's a moment at one point where she's fighting off a bunch of police officers, and this one guy cuts her arm and she gets angry and she goes and she stabs into him, and there's like a pause where you can see like they're waiting for something, and then all of a sudden this blood squib just goes off like crazy. So it was like this delayed effect, but it looked so cool that they kept it. Or maybe it was intentional, I don't know, but to me that's what it looked like like it was a delayed reaction, but it was so awesome.
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
Right? I thought it was awesome because she reacted to it.
If it was just a happy mistake that ended up being mimicked throughout cinematic history.
Yeah.
The delayed blood, the delay fall, the delay head falling off.
Everything. Yeah, it was so great. I mean, the opening alone is epic. It very much looks like something out of a manga. Like the settings are very beautiful. There's snow everywhere. It's just this lady in a kimono walking through town at night with an umbrella, and she's accustomed by these like gangs that are out on patrol, and they're like, "Get out of the way, woman!" And they're like, "Don't you know who this is? This is the gang leader, such and such." And she's just like sitting there, and they're like, "Whatever, kill her." I want to say there's no boring parts in this film to me. Everything just moves. It moves, and it's ultra violent, and like from the get-go she does this crazy almost supernatural flip into the air, comes down, slices off a guy's arm. So like the first thing you see is a dude's arm cut off, blood spraying everywhere, and like the movie just goes. And it's cool because you're like, where did this sword come from? She pulls it out of her umbrella. Her umbrella is like her katana sheath. It's freaking dope. I absolutely love the opening to this. I love the way that they fight. This very much is a samurai film, and quite possibly the bloodiest one I've seen. It's definitely the bloodiest one that I own. And I want to say to this date of the movies from the 60s and 70s, it's definitely one of the gorier ones. That's why I like it. But it's over the top gory, so it's not like it turns your stomach because it's completely fake. You can tell it's fake, but it's almost fun because it's just so crazy, like how it just sprays everywhere. She slices through people, blood sprays everywhere, and like she's always wearing white or light shade colors, and by the end of a scene she's doused in blood. Again, referencing the whole Lady Snowblood. What did you guys think of that? Was it too much for you? Did it take you out of the moment, or were you able to really enjoy those segments?
It's never too much.
You know, we both really enjoyed it. Me and Chuck really enjoyed it. No doubt in my mind that Chuck's in the same mindset, that all three of us are in the same mindset.
And was this anyone's first time viewing, or have we all seen this before? Because I've seen this before. I own this. This was my Blu-ray copy I watched.
Yeah, I've seen it.
So everyone's seen it twice at least?
Yeah.
Okay.
A few times. Jacob, do you own the Criterion?
I do. I own the double feature. This and House, I believe, are the only like two Criterion movies that I was like, hey, I own a Criterion film, because I noticed it was like the actual Criterion box. But I also found out, I think Onibaba is Criterion as well.
Yeah.
And I own that on Blu-ray as well. So I now own 3 Criterion box sets in my house. So.
And they're all Japanese.
And they're all Japanese, yeah. I mean, because they made the best, man. They made the best for their time. This is definitely Criterion worthy because it's not just an over-the-top violent samurai movie. There is a beautiful story here. The pacing is unbelievable. The cinematography is on point. Has so many cool influences and styles that, because it came out in 73, I'm not 100% sure if they influenced certain spaghetti westerns at the time, or if maybe they pulled from certain spaghetti westerns, because again, we go back to the spaghetti westerns and samurai films. I feel like both genres pulled from each other and gave nods to each other, because there are scenes in this where they do the close-up of the eyes and pull back, just like Tarantino does in his films. There's stuff that I see them doing here that I know was done in samurai films before Western is used, like when they would do like the slow movement, the pacing with the sword before, setting up that beat of like, you're gonna draw, you're gonna pull your gun, you're gonna pull.
They had your thumb flip that you love.
Have my thumb flip. I love my thumb flip. It's the best. Gonna loosen up that katana blade, get it ready to pull out. There are some moments where like it also tries to be experimental too. Like, did you guys notice some of the like shaky movements of the camera at times where like it would almost feel like they were just like walking around with the camera? It's like they were trying something kind of experimental. I liked it. I've heard some people be like, it's too much, and I think if the whole film was shaky it wouldn't look good, but I like that there are moments where it's like, ooh, it's kind of like doing something you haven't seen done yet. It's not perfectly still. Where like, for example, Kurosawa films, they're smooth. It's positioned perfectly. It's angled perfectly. This one, they almost kind of made it feel like you're there as a bystander watching. The TV screen is your eyes. I thought that was cool. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't know. I've watched it
I don't
too many
think
times,
so.
Probably.
I'm curious as to know how many cameras were used during a scene, because I would think with how much blood effects they had, that, covering the snow and everything, that they probably had to reset a scene was like a long time. So that probably, I wouldn't be surprised if they had multiple cameras and they're like, just try to get whatever angles you can, because we might only have a take or two of this before we have to move on.
Right. And I mean, let's get to the point. This is a simple revenge story too. So like I said, it's a beautiful story, but it's very simple. It's short, sweet, and to the point, at least in my humble opinion. I mean, it's a woman on a war path of vengeance after 4 people who wronged her family. You know, she's out for vengeance for the death of her mother, her father, and her brother, who she never met because she was born and that had already happened to her. And it's cool because, like, as she's on this path of vengeance, she's killing these folks off one by one. It's not just her killing them. She's going through their fucking bodyguards and their army. Like, she's taking them all out. And then all the while, we have our badass Masaki from Godzilla. He plays the journalist or a novelist. I'm not quite sure what he was, but I know he wrote stories of some sort, and like he was like part of the press in what was it, 1860s, I think is when it was set, which is cool too because this is at the end of is it called the Edo era? Like, it's the end of the samurai when they fall
Meiji?
They fall under the reign of the emperor and they become one nation now. So like basically the samurais are kind of dying out and Western culture and influence is taking over, which you start to see. And of course, by the end of the movie, they're at a party full of Western social elites as well as Japanese social elites. So like you really start to see that cultural difference. I think this is one of the ones I liked because it takes you to the end of the samurai era while being a badass samurai film in itself. And granted, she's more of an assassin, but the way she fights is so cool. The short katana, she always holds it pointing down and she slices up. Like the way she moves, the fight choreography, everything about it's really cool, and yet stylized to cater to her and how she fights, to almost give her this, like I said earlier, supernatural flow. She's just vicious and she's just nonstop because she's been trained to do nothing but this since birth.
It's supernatural flow. It's kind of a weird statement, but I think you nailed it because she is often referred to as a demon. She's like a demon of revenge. She was born for vengeance. You don't have a lot of people that were born for vengeance.
Yeah, right. Like that's her only goal in life.
Something bad happened and they said, I'm going to go out and get my revenge. But this woman was like, hey, listen, you were born to kill all these people, all right?
You're saying you haven't gone to like TGI Fridays and see the waiter and be like, you ever wonder what you were born for? And he's like, I was born for vengeance, but I work here now.
Yeah, just happen to be here. Gotta get that 9 to 5 now that I'm done with my vengeance. What do you do after that too?
Vengeance, but...
I mean, modern day vengeance is always, it usually has to do with somebody dying and them taking revenge. Death Wish is that way
every time, right?
Yeah,
that's the quintessential vengeance plot.
And like you were saying too about the art of it, it is extremely gory, but a lot of times with the blood effects, the spatter effects, it made me think of a Jackson Pollock painting where it was just art. We didn't know necessarily what it was going to turn out to look like, but it is more or less art.
Right, I think that's a great analogy of Pollock painting. And it reminded me at times the way that some of the blood would spew up on the walls. It reminded me going back to Harakiri where, you know, the one guy, it's that famous scene where like he gets gutted and he just smears his hand full of blood on the wall as he falls down. And I was like, it's kind of like that, but more visual and visceral, more in your face. While at the same time doing beautiful shots without blood. All the sequences of her walking through town before, like any shot with her before getting into a fight with 30 dudes was always set up beautifully. And the camera, I think the scene that I love is her walking through the cemetery and as she's making her way down the steps and she's accosted by all those guys.
We love our cemetery scenes.
Oh man, do we? And she just does that amazing walkthrough where it's like she's just fucking them up left and right because they just keep coming in at her. She just keeps cutting them down. And I think it's this really cool shot where she's coming down the bottom of the steps and there's like a group of 4 guys and she's just like cuts right through them, fucks them all up, and then another guy comes in front of her, she cuts him down. That guy, the last guy, falls over, and then as she walks away, the 3 guys that she just walked through, they're all like standing stuck, frozen in time, and then they just fall down dead. That's so cool. Like, again, very artsy, very well done. And it was like, it was so fast that they didn't even have time to reflex. They were just like dead before they knew it, and they were just kind of like frozen for a moment, like, oh, I'm dead, and then fall over. I thought that was so cool. I was like, that's fucking dope. It was great. And then just the way it looked, how the camera moved around her, and it allows you to see everything so well. So like you said, I'm curious how they choreographed some of this stuff and how they positioned it, because that scene was clearly just one camera, but it's the way it moved. And of course there's less blood in it, so I think that's why they were able to pull that one off, because you would see certain people when they would get cut, because it was all in one movement, it all was one take. When they would get cut, their backs would then go to camera, and it was like obviously pre-prepared, but it was neat to see how they paced and placed it. I thought that was really neat. Like, that's, you got to think that one out, you know? It's like, man, to see that and the way it comes all together, it's like, that's really cool. Really, really cool.
What would you say the standout is? What's the big standout in this movie over the rest?
Yeah, I'd like to know.
Personally for you.
I mean, it's got to be the masks. We get our Mission Impossible mask. it's such a great reveal. That whole scene's great, but
I love that. Yeah,
it's such a, I don't know why that was like the one scene I forgot about. Like I remembered most of the movie before watching it, but I forgot that I was like, oh yeah, she kills the bad guy, and then they're like, wait a second, it's like a full-on Mission Impossible Scooby-Doo moment. They're like, I don't think this looks like a real beard at all, and I'm like, well, the real guy doesn't look like he's wearing a real beard either. It's very obviously a fake beard too. They're just like, just start peeling his whole face off. Oh, this isn't the guy. This isn't
For
who we're looking for
1863, that is a hell of a good makeup job.
Yeah.
I didn't even know like that kind of appliance had been made at this point. That was a pretty epic little reveal. Not only that, she butchered the shit out of that guy, cut both his hands off as he bled out, and then fucking cut his throat, and he dies. And that's when she pulls off his mask, and it's like, oh, it's not him, it's someone else. And then she gets to kill him again, the real one this time, and then gives him a brutal death. And I think that whole ending, the way it comes together, is really good. Just the brutality of it. And I feel like every kill scene with the bosses, the 4 specific people that she's after, every kill scene is brutal. Even the one with the woman who, you know, she went through like 40 of her guys, and so the woman tried to take the easy way out, so she was like, you know, she goes upstairs and hangs herself. And I like that she walked in there and she's like, oh, you think you can get out of this because you're dead and hanging? She cuts her in half, and the body drops and blood just drips down. And I love the journalist that shows up. He's just like, god damn. Like, she was dead already. It's like, no, she's definitely dead now. In case she was faking her hanging, she's dead now. I love that. Like, everything was brutal.
You can't take any chances. Somebody survives, and then they're gonna seek revenge on you. No witnesses, nothing. You gotta take them all out.
And that's what I like too. Like, even though there was this journalist involved trying to tell her story and get the word out, you know, I think there's the moment where she's talking to the guy that trained her, who is the cameo, the man from Sword of Doom, and she's like, I don't understand why you would tell him about me and what I'm doing. It's like, you're basically letting them know, like, hey, I'm here to kill you. And he's like, that's exactly why. It lures them out. Now they're gonna come out. They're gonna come after you, and like, we're gonna get this job done. And it's like, oh, okay, fine. So I like that aspect, that it really gets the ball rolling from there, because now they're coming after her. But again,
she's the bait and the weapon,
right? It's like that saying, it's like, she's not trapped in a room with them, they're trapped in a room with her and fucked.
What's that deep sea fish with the dangling thing on its head? The light
angler fish or something like that.
That's what she is.
You're right. Lures them in.
I was noticing some words from her song. My Japanese still isn't obviously fluent, but it is nice to pick up a few words. In particular, her name, that is just Snow. Yuki.
And Yuki means snow. I see. I didn't know that. I was just like, oh, Yuki. Because you hear the name Yuki a lot. In fact, a lot of the names in this film are familiar Japanese names. Just like over here, it's like, you know, every Tom, Dick, and Harry, like, it's familiar names that you know. So I thought that was kind of neat. I didn't realize. I just learned something new. Yuki means snow. And it plays out well.
I like the fake snow too. I'll just go off of the idea of snow, but I really like that set from the prison, like how much of a stage it felt like.
They do that in a lot of those shots where everything's like, there's almost no background. It's just flat black, and characters just emerge from black.
It's set pieces. I love that they used actual sets. There are some scenes where they're in a real area.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when they do the flashback of her family getting killed, that's a real area.
Where they're by the cliff.
Right. The opening scene with the snow, totally a set. The end scene with the snow, totally a set. The insides of the building when she's going after the woman, that's a set.
All the characters, actors.
All the characters, actors. All the blood, squibs. But yeah, like, it's really cool how they set up the sets. And I like it because when you're on that set, it feels tight. Like, the space feels closed while also looking very open. It's a weird feeling it puts out there. I don't know if that's maybe just because of how they're trying to make it look on camera. I'm not sure, but that's just what I picked up, was like, it felt like a tight space that at the same time was very open. Like it was shrinking on you, I guess.
I think the style, though, like the close-ups and everything, even though they'll be in interesting angles and everything, it's because, like, yeah, they're hiding the fact that they don't really have much of a background. Maybe it is something, like I said earlier, where there's a lot of blood everywhere, so depending on the take, it has to be like a close-up of the face, because you can't see that in that take the blood's not there or something.
Well, and even the cemetery scene that I talked about with her walking through the cemetery and going down the steps and everything, that was clearly a real place, but even that had the look look of a set to it. The scene that I was talking about where she's fighting all the officers in the yard, that looked like a set as well. And it's hard to tell if that was actually a set that they had built or if that was a place that they filmed at, because it had an exterior look to it that was like tight but open. Like it was hard to tell sometimes. I mean, some were more obvious than others, but I just thought that was really cool how it adds to the feeling of the art of it all. Like you're looking at a picture or a painting. Going into earlier, you had reminded me with the whole set pieces, the journalist and like him following her around. I like that they were trying to have the journalist be like, he was clearly interested in her and wanting to save her, while she's like, I don't have time for love, I don't have time for you, I'm on a vengeance path, get out of my way or get killed. And I like that eventually he just jumps on board and is like, all right, fuck it, I'll help you. And of course, you know, leading up to the end, the way that they get the guy at the end, I thought that was cool, because it was like the brutality of everything and him taking the blunt of the hit, like dying out to keep this guy cornered so that she has an easy kill and has to ram her sword through the journalist into the main guy and like just gutting him. I was like, that was epic. And of course him getting free and then her just doing it again, like not caring, like she did not care about her life at all. She was like, I'm gonna take you out. You know, there were moments that showed some human side of her. They showed these moments of her being vulnerable, but more in a way where she's like, you could tell it's like she wanted to be something else, maybe briefly, but she accepted who she was. Example being the young woman, and again, I'm so sorry because I'm forgetting names, but the other young woman in the show whose father is the gambler, the addict that's like, you know, gets in trouble for basically cheating, and then she has to handle all that, and so she kind of becomes friends with this girl while saving the father, ultimately ends up having to kill him. And then of course the girl has her vengeance story now. So all the while you're watching Lady Snowblood's vengeance play out because of what happened to her family, you now have this young girl going through the same thing. So at the very end, after Snowblood has almost survived this slaying of everyone and she's already gravely wounded, the girl comes up and rams the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, so that she falls down and bleeds out in the snow. And that's just kind of how it leaves you hanging, like, oh, this is it, it's over. Music kicks in, it fades away, it's like her story is done, it's told, vengeance played out. And it literally was to the point where she was in so deep with it all that while she was on her vengeance quest, she ended up creating another vengeance quest for someone else. It was like vengeance upon vengeance.
Upon vengeance, because of her mother too.
That too, yeah, it was like triple vengeance.
I'm not huge on exposition, but I do love the exposition of how they like withhold information and then they would go back to the mom. All right, here's what happened. And she would just like kind of start telling her side of the story. It would become visual-ish. I mean, the attack of the family was very verbal. That was like, you're one of those, what did they think that the dad was?
A dandy.
Like, obviously the enemy, because they were all white or something. And he's like, I'm not that person. But they still decide to fucking murder him and his son and rape his wife. And then
they just wanted an excuse.
Then they go back to, when they go back to the mom, she's like, listen, I know I was kind of a slut, but that was my revenge plan, was like I had to have a kid that would be able to get out of here, enact vengeance on my behalf. And I was like, okay,
and
that's
swears
like weird.
Her friends to do it for her. And I'm glad that they gave you that exposition, like you said, because it wasn't boring exposition, it was cool exposition. And like you said, you do get the visual parts of it. Like she starts talking and then it goes into it and it shows you what went down, to where you actually do feel bad for her. You're like, oh, well, damn, now I get why Yuki goes on this killing spree, because her whole family was taken away from her before she was even born. That's the crazy part too.
And then she had the sickest master, trainer, sensei.
Yeah,
that guy,
the old priest,
totally explains why she's so cold-blooded, because she shows up, she's a child, she's innocent, and he's like, nah, this is gonna be brutal. You're basically gonna be a slave at this point and suffer.
He had to put her in that mentality. He had to show her like, you're not human, and he had to treat her as such. That's why she goes around and is such a badass to the point where people think she's a literal demon because of her training and being forced to do that. And I like the scene where, like, we were talking about the barrels, and her falling through the barrels and stuff and then getting out, and he's just yelling at her, get up, mm-hmm. Do it again. And the poor maidservant's there and she's like, oh, this poor child. He's like, no, don't interfere, she needs to get up, we gotta toughen her up. Walk it off, kid.
Yeah, smacking her around with the swords and all that shit.
We had mentioned earlier, we were talking about Tarantino being heavily inspired by this, and I even brought up, you can tell there are moments where this movie pulls from spaghetti westerns, and obviously spaghetti westerns pull from this film. Are there other movies that may have come to mind when you guys were watching this? Did you think of anything else? Because I feel like there's a ton of things that draw inspiration from this movie alone in the entire Japanese samurai cinema. Like, there's so many things that I see when I'm watching this. I'm like, not just Tarantino, but other people pull from. One example, pretty obvious with the over-the-top gore and blood, is almost any early 2000 the monster B movies of Japan, like Machine Gun Girl and stuff like that, how in Tokyo Gore Police, the over-the-top blood squibs and spray and all that. But did anything come to mind for you guys when you were watching this? I'm just curious in general. It's okay if you don't have anything, but I was watching it, just like things would just pop up. I'm like, oh, I bet that's where this came from. Like someone pulled that from this movie.
The one I think of is the dumbest one I could think of. There's a scene in Wonder Woman where she puts the sword like down the back of her dress and to like hide it. And it's exactly what she does. She does in this 100%. Movie. And I was like, I don't know why that was the dumbest thing, that when she does that, I go, that's what she does in Wonder Woman.
Right? But it's not dumb, because not just in Wonder Woman, but like a ton of action flicks. Die Hard, where does the gun go? He tapes it to his back. Mm-hmm. So many movies, I feel, took that concept and doing it a little differently, but like it definitely inspired that, where it's like, oh, you hide it behind you, put it up there behind you.
Yep.
And the fact of like having the weapon inside her umbrella, right? What is that movie? The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? Is that no? Not the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
That is a movie.
That is
Sorry. The Avengers. I'm thinking of the Avengers, not Marvel's The Avengers. The 60s mod Avengers,
with
where
the
like
bride,
they have
with
the
Uma
cane
Thurman.
with the sword. Yeah, they have the cane with the sword in it. I'm like, oh, it's like the umbrella. So like I feel like that was inspired by this, or at least by the manga, because that's something that's clearly in the manga as well. What came to mind for you, Justin?
I don't know if it came from this movie, because it's definitely in Battles of Honor and Humanity. I'm a scatterbrain all the time. But every time there was somebody came up, they had to tell you exactly who they were. The most modern thing I can think of is when I was watching Shin Godzilla, and it's just continuously being like, this is the president of this is the CEO of this company, this is this person. So much information is just being slapped on the screen, like, we don't have enough time to go into this in detail. We're not even going to do a voiceover. We're just stamping it on.
Yeah, I like that. I'm sorry, this feels like it's a short segment today, because I kind of just prattled on. But is there anything else you guys want to bring up or discuss? Anything that your takeaways from this? I've kind of gone through all my greatest hits for this movie. I mean, I like this movie simply because it was one of the first that I saw in the samurai genre after having watched the Kurosawa films. Like, I got into that samurai, when you come across your first samurai movie and you're like, ooh, this is neat, I like this, and you want to have more. So you watch the classics, you watch your Kurosawa, then you get into the 90s and the 2000s, and you watch some of those modern for me at the time, because I was a young teenager coming out. And you're like, oh, okay, these are awesome. And like, you get your Takeshi Miike films, you got 13 Assassins, you have Suyaki Western Django, the crossovers, Tokyo Gore Police. You start
The Last Samurai.
Films. Yeah, The Last Samurai. And like, I'm watching those while watching the classics, and then like you find out like, oh, there's these other style films from the 70s that Japan was putting out that like they don't always talk about as much. And you go and you watch their what I call like samurai exploitation films, and Lady Snowblood is one of them to me.
Oh yeah,
just like
it's an
just like Female
film.
Prisoner. Yeah, just like Female Prisoner. I started watching, I was like, man, there's this whole genre that like I didn't even know, like a subgenre of the genre that I didn't even know about. So I was immediately drawn to this film. I loved it. I loved the story. I loved having, Miko in it. And then of course, I'm a big fan of over the top cheesy blood. Like, I don't like gory to be gross. Like don't get me wrong, the horror movie Terrifier, like it's a fun little gore film, but it's like really intense gore. I like over the top silly gore, and it doesn't pull me out of the moment, because for me it adds to it, because it's like, that's cool without making me want to vomit. I like that because it's silly and dramatic. Like, the death is as dramatic as the acting, and it's over the top and not necessarily necessary, but it works. It doesn't pull me out of the moment. In fact, it makes me go, that's cool, I like that, because it's stylized. I don't need it to be intense. Like, I don't need to see someone committing harakiri and slowly gutting themselves as their intestines pull out. No, man, just like have them stab themselves, do a cutaway with someone chopping their head off, and blood sprays. It doesn't work like that in reality, but it's fun to watch because it just looks neat. It's artistic. It's a Jackson Pollock painting,
Because it's fun.
Because it's fun.
that Tarantino interview that he had over Kill Bill, and that woman that's interviewing him from the news station with that ridiculous hat. We're gonna find the clip for you so you can put it up, Jacob.
Anyway, audiences worldwide were first introduced to Quentin Tarantino with Reservoir Dogs. Let me see if he's on the line, but it was Pulp Fiction that won him an Oscar and launched him into this A-list status he's in. Some people say he's all about style over substance. Some people say he's glamorized violence. Some people say he's a genius. His latest movie, Kill Bill, is a tale of a former assassin's quest for revenge. It stars Uma Thurman and Lucy Liu. Now, Quentin joins us. There he is, baby. How are you, Quentin?
I am here, Jen. How you doing?
New York. All right, all right. I haven't seen you since Pulp Fiction. Now,
here I am. Do I look just as handsome?
Yeah. Okay. I think they used that colored gel, though, that they used for Lucille Ball on Mame.
Oh, really? Okay, well, you're lucky I can't see you right now.
Oh, I look, darling, I look now. Okay, speaking of Mame, okay, I'm going to do a little segue here. Mame into violence and Kill Bill. This movie's doing very well, by the way, Quentin. Why are you with us? Why did you decide to do
Why
this?
am I with you?
Yeah, I mean, did you decide
so it can keep doing good and to spread the Kill Bill word, especially to the San Francisco Bay Area.
But one of the things you said recently, is this true or were you misquoted, that children should see Kill Bill, advising kids to see it? Did you actually say that, or is that a misquote, Quentin?
No. It's like, if it's an R-rated movie, if their parents will take them to go see it, they'll have a blast. I actually think from 12 up, all right, you know, is a really good audience that they will love Kill Bill. Girls will love it because they'll be empowered by
How are they empowered, exactly?
They'll go home, put a poster on their wall and stuff. Parents got to take them to see it, but if you're cool parents, you will do it.
Cool parents, really. Quentin, would you say this movie teaches girls to be empowered by being violent and vicious, just like boys in the movie? Would you say that's the empowerment?
It empowers women, but it empowers girls by the fact that Uma Thurman is a female warrior. She's a female avenger. Right. Revenge is like one of the classic staples in drama.
I see, but a lot of innocent people. I've seen the film,
and to have
Quentin.
girls not be not only the girlfriends in movies, but you know, this is a movie about women. They're not about cute girls going
it's about killer women.
All right, with their butts and their t-shirts that stop below their before their belly button, asking permission to kick ass. These girls just kick ass. They're warriors. They live by a code of honor, and they die by that code of honor too.
And innocent people die along the way. It's about that kind of thing. Now, tell me this.
You know, innocent people die along the way because unfortunately, that's the story of revenge. Revenge is messy. It never works out the way you want it to.
Why the need for so much gruesome, graphic violence? Why not let us imagine
Because it's so much fun, Jan. Get it?
Oh, really? Okay, I'd like to see you walk down the street and get attacked by some kids who've just seen your movie.
But you saw it. But see, Jan, you're all messed up because you're talking about real life.
Oh,
and I'm talking about the movies. You got to get it straight. Now, if you want to talk about the movies, we'll talk about the movies.
Okay, and kids at 12 can tell the difference. Kids at 12 can tell the difference. You tell their parents that, Quentin.
I saw movies when I was a kid, all right? I saw all the movies that I'm basing my movies on are the movies I saw as a kid, and yes, kids go to a movie theater, they can tell the difference. Maybe you couldn't when you were a kid, but I could.
Okay, honey, we're getting the hook. You're doing well, obviously. You're laughing all the way to the bank, and I know some
I'm
parents
having
would
a
love
great
to talk
time
to
making
you.
a terrific movie that people are having fun seeing. Maybe not you, but you know what, Jan? I don't think I made it for you.
I bet you didn't, and I'm glad you didn't. I'm just sorry.
Well, don't worry about that, baby.
We'll move on. You're doing great. What do you care about me? All right, Quentin, well, look, it's your genre. You own it. It's your genre, and you own it. And that's why he's, Quentin Tarantino, doing so well. And this is a movie that he thinks kids should see. And I'm on the record saying I do not think kids should see it. I think adults who see it should be warned. It's very violent, incredibly violent, and soulless. There's no soul in it. And I wonder how he sees women being empowered when there's no soul.
All right. Thanks, Jen.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
I love that bit. I also feel like that bit had to have been staged.
I don't think so. It was like one of those just awful interviews. I buy it. I don't think it was staged. I don't think he needed anybody to. I don't think he needed that publicity. And it wasn't even the internet age. Like, it's not like how information is now where it's spread so fast. Chuck can show me something that happened an hour ago, and I'm like, yeah, I've seen it.
Fair enough.
My favorite thing about this is definitely the style. You can definitely see how it kind of goes away from realism. It does dive into the gore. It dives into the fact that, yeah, we have a female protagonist. I like the idea that a lot of times it's used to her advantage, where we've seen it happen before. Zatoichi, where he's blind, they have something where for some reason they don't think that this person is capable of doing the things that they're capable of doing. And I love that. Now, the reason Kill Bill obviously gets brought up so fucking much is because the strongest pull probably any of his movies is from this into Kill Bill, and I had seen Kill Bill first. So when I saw this, I'm like, the fucking songs in it, the shots are the same, the story is almost the same. He almost takes this verbatim. When you think of something like Reservoir,
it was definitely a love letter. It was 100% a love letter to this movie. I wouldn't even say an homage. It was a love letter, and it was done so well, to the fact that he even got the original actress in Kill Bill to cameo. Like, he got her in the movie.
That's his thing. That
and
he
then
did with Franco
not only
Nero.
did he get her in the right, and not only did he get her in the movie, at the end of Kill Bill, he literally gives you the exact same ending that Lady Snowblood has, to the point where he makes Lucy Liu. She looks just like Yuki. Everything about her is just like Yuki. I think her sword is the same. She even has the yellow well, it's been a while since I've seen Kill Bill, but does she have the yellow butterflies on her kimono when she's fighting Uma Thurman at the end?
I think, yeah, she's designed to look like Lady Snowblood, and obviously Uma Thurman's meant to look like Bruce Lee.
Right. And there's also, Uma Thurman's character being strongly driven by revenge for what was done to her. It's a vengeance story. I think there's that line where she says, talking about, Lucy Liu's character, what was her name? Cottonmouth? Her code name was Cottonmouth, I think. She was talking about it. She's like, her only mistake was she didn't kill me. She should have made sure I was dead.
Was it Oranishi?
Yeah, Oranishi. And she was like, she should have made sure I was dead. Because he gives her such a great story where you're like, I think Uma Thurman's going to have a tough time taking down Oranishi. And she did, but she still killed her because her one mistake was Oranishi did not make sure that Uma was dead. She did not kill her. She should have made sure Black Mama was out, and she was not.
There were even some dialogue. I didn't pick it up the last couple times that I watched it, but Yuki has some of that ditzy kind of dialogue, that weird, sporadic, over-narrating dialogue that the bride has in Kill Bill. I can't give like an exact example, but like when she's talking, it'll be sort of like, how she's like, I want them to know what you know, what they already know, like that type of thing. Yuki's talking the exact same way. When she speaks, she's actually very surreal kind of in that aspect of it too. I love this movie, and I loved all the movies. I'm gonna love the next movie too.
And I have to say, upon rewatching, this is still my favorite. It's still my number one. But I will say, Harakiri has positioned itself at number 2 very comfortably. It is now my new favorite number 2. But Lady Snowblood, upon my rewatch, as always, I love every minute of it. And it's no fault to Harakiri. Harakiri is a great film, but it's the pacing for me. I'm one of those people, like, I like to be entertained. I like to have fun. And while Harakiri is a beautiful movie, it's well done. It's a great story. It's told well. It's shot well. It's epic. It has the payoff. From the get-go, Lady Snowblood, it goes. And it doesn't stop until the credits roll.
Would you say she's pro-samurai?
Yeah, I would definitely say pro-samurai. I was also going to say earlier, I meant to start the show off with this. We covered Harakiri, the anti-samurai film. We covered Sword of Doom, the anti-hero film. And now we're doing Lady Snowblood, the anti-man film. Like, it was badass. Do what, Chuck?
She kills some women.
Oh, yeah. No, she doesn't discriminate. I just meant, like, it's a hero in a samurai film that is not a man. And I like that it breaks from those norms. And like I said, I think it's thanks to Lady Snowblood. It's thanks to Mikio Kaji that I'm so sorry to anyone listening if I'm butchering her name. I have a tough time with Japanese names, but I do try to say them as best I can. But it's all thanks to her that we have badass female action stars like Michelle Yeoh, who is probably my all-time favorite action star, more so than any man. I love Michelle Yeoh. Anything she does, anything she makes, I love. It's part of why Everything Everywhere All at Once is one of my favorite movies that came out.
I didn't realize you were saying a title until halfway through that.
Because it's a crazy title.
You're like, everywhere. Yeah, I was like, oh shit, yeah.
Right. And then of course, you have Sigourney Weaver with all the and Linda Hamilton from like the 90s and 2000s with the Alien movies and Terminator. Like, you have these badass female roles, and this is a role that she's not a mother figure, she's not a love interest, she is a woman on a mission to get shit done, and it is badass, epic through and through. And the story is simple. It's entertaining. It's well done. It tells you everything from beginning to end, even with the exposition there. Exposition is applied appropriately when it's needed. It's quickly there to move the story forward. And half the time, I feel like that exposition is given about a character right before you meet the character, and then she kills him.
There's an element of surprise sometimes where the audience doesn't know where something's going. When you first see her, you don't know if she's even a good person or not. You know she's what the story revolves around because you're going to see a movie called Lady Snowblood, and you're, oh, that must be her. But you don't know what anyone's done yet, or who they are, or if they are the person that she's personally seeking revenge on, because like things will just keep jumping back to explain something or show you something different. So I think that's kind of like the pacing is quick, but it doesn't even give you time to like digest a lot of one scene before it's like, let's explain that. Let's go back. Okay, now we're going to jump a little bit farther where we're already on the next person.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, there's more to the mother story. Let's go back to the mom.
I like that you said that too, because this is probably like my 10th time watching this. I usually watch this movie about once a year since I bought it on Blu-ray, and this is like probably my 10th time since I bought it watching. I've had this movie for a while. Well, honestly, it's like my 10th time watching it, but I think I bought this movie in like 2015 when they released it. But that being said,
I mean, like you bought it in 2015. That's about 10 watches.
Oh shit, yeah, it is 2024. Damn, shit, okay.
Sorry,
yeah,
Jacob. We're much older than we think we are.
I forgot what I was gonna say. Shit,
I'm sorry.
That's okay. It doesn't matter.
That's my special skill.
Understanding what's going on. Every time I watch this, I know what's going on. I love what's happening, but I still pick up something new that I may have missed before. And sometimes I forget things, like Chuck said. Like, I always forget that the first time she kills the guy, it's not really him. It's a mask he's wearing. It's a Mission Impossible. And I always forget about that. So like, oh yeah, this is when she cuts off his hand and kills him. I was like, oh, and it's not him. That's right. I forget every time. I remember his hands getting cut off and him bleeding out everywhere, but I always forget it's not him. It's a different person wearing a mask.
Do you think it was De Palma that loved that, or do you think it was Tom Cruise that loved that?
Definitely De Palma. That's something else I want to say. We were talking about influences. De Palma. You can tell 100% De Palma pulled from this movie as well. It wasn't just Tarantino.
He loves these exploitation films. He loves the Giallo films.
Dressed to Kill is an amazing film. It's a highly underrated De Palma film. And look at the over-the-top in Scarface. Yes, it's a gun shoot 'em up movie, but there is some over-the-top sequences in Scarface that are heavily inspired by the over-the-top in this. In fact, I want to say, and this is just me, with my opinion, I feel like the chainsaw scene that they cut away on in Scarface, where they're cutting the guy in the bathroom and the blood sprays everywhere, heavily influenced by this. Had to have been. If anything, he saw this movie and was inspired to be like, we need to do something like that in Scarface. And it works, because in Scarface, the over the top, it works because of the uber violence with the shooting and all that. So like it adds to it without taking away. And then of course, Al Pacino being an over the top character also adds to that. So I feel like that's one of those movies that like this inspired. Dressed to Kill was also, I feel, inspired by this. In general, De Palma was very much had to have been inspired by this movie. And if not, I'd be really surprised.
I agree.
I think it's a good movie. Like I said earlier, I think it pairs well with, if you do a double feature of this and Shogun Assassin. They're both revenge movies. They're both one. You get one that's the mother-daughter, and the other's the father-son. So it's like they really are exact opposites in that way. They fit together very perfectly to get that. The other thing I would say, bringing up, you brought up earlier, movies that probably also pulled from this. I would say also some of my favorite movies, Park Chan-wook's Vengeance films, especially Lady Vengeance. Is definitely
right.
Is
I was thinking the same thing. 100%.
We're quickly gonna be like, Old Boy. You're like, Lady Vengeance.
Lady Vengeance.
Like, come on.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I knew where you were going with that.
And you know what's cool about Shogun Assassin? It's been a while since I've seen it, but that's Sonny Chiba, right? Shogun Assassin. I think that's Sonny Chiba.
Different guy.
No, it's different guy. Okay.
Different guy on that one.
Different guy on that one. Okay, but that one is. It also has some of that over the top. I want to call it the lateral blood spray, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a bit violent, and it was also shortly made around the same time. It was like 74 as well, right?
They're got to be around the same time.
What's funny is I own that one too. That was one of the earlier films that I had seen that got me on the pathway when I started like going out collecting stuff. This was back in the day when I could just go to a video store and like get a $5 bin, and it happened to be there. So I owned it on DVD, and I have not visited that film in a while. And since you brought it up, I think I'm gonna go watch it. It'll be my late double feature. It'll be my day after feature. But because I do remember that one being a great one that I really liked. And then of course I found Lady Snowblood, and it's like when people are like, need a samurai movie, it's like, well, first you got to start with this. You got to watch Lady Snowblood. Check out your Kurosawa films just so you understand, but you want to have fun. Lady Snowblood every time. Highly recommended.
And just so you know, I watched Haunted Samurai. I'd say it's pretty mid. It was all right. It wasn't. It was. There was a reason that
violent. Was Snowblood more violent? More bloody?
Yes, it was.
That's disappointing because you had my hopes up for the Haunted Samurai.
I didn't. The box did. I mean, I guess in the grand scheme of things, as an exploitation film, they sold it. They did what they were supposed to. They sold it.
As someone who grew up in the age of posters being cooler than the movie, we should know better.
I'm trying to remember what we did in the past, Chuck. Do you remember what we did for revenge? We had a theme of revenge.
I did. I think I did Point Blank.
That was your revenge movie?
That was my revenge one. And then it would have been you and
Point
James.
Blank's really revenge.
You're thinking of Point Break.
Well,
oh, yeah. Thank you, Chuck. Sorry.
That might... No, I think that was our noir because we did Chinatown, Angel Heart,
is that
Brick.
neo-noir?
Yeah. Well, the thing right before it I saw was Speed Racer. I was like,
The greatest thing about Chinatown is as you watch it, it's all one build up for the very end of the movie right before it's over where he just goes, only in Chinatown.
Yeah.
It's all for that line. The entire film was made for that one line, only in Chinatown.
What is the line? It's Chinatown. It's not. You're like that huge line at the end of Chinatown. That I'm gonna butcher.
The two words that I'm still butchering, only in Chinatown. That's Chinatown for you, baby.
That's Chinatown. That's your Swedish version, your Swedish version of the movie. Only Chinatown.
Only in Chinatown. It's great stuff. Good movie.
But I don't remember what we did for revenge.
Well, I tell you what, you guys do another revenge one, I'm happy to come tag along. And also, as we're wrapping this up, we have one more movie, and we've talked about him. It wouldn't be Samurai Month without doing one of his films.
Ron, we're doing Ron's movie.
We're doing Ron. We're finally getting Ron on the show. We're covering Akira Kurosawa's Ran, aka Ron Burgundy. And correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, isn't this Kurosawa's last movie he made, or last samurai film he made? It was like the epic he went out
Unsure. Definitely not his last movie.
We'll do our research and have more info at the next recording for sure.
Maybe one of his last expensive movies, though, because he had a hard time getting funding after this movie. So I think this kind of ballooned and maybe was more of like a critical success than a financial success, but we'll do our research. We'll look into it.
What do you call it? It's like an indie darling where like everyone loves it, but the studios hate it because it didn't make them any money until it went to DVD.
Yeah.
For example, I think you guys have talked about it. I've talked about it on other shows, but John Carpenter's The Thing is a huge success. People love it now. It still makes money now, but at the time of its release, it was a blockbuster fail. People despised it. It was gross. They weren't ready for it. It did not make any money for the studios. It
hurt his career.
It hurt his career, kind of got him blackballed a little bit. And I'm wondering if Ron, damn it, you got me saying it. I'm wondering if Ran is like that for Kurosawa. So I'm really interested because I haven't seen it yet. I've seen trailers for it. I've seen clips, but I've never actually watched it myself. And I didn't even realize it was a Kurosawa film. So now I'm really excited about it to check it out. Plus, if anybody watched that cool little promo reel that we put together to hype up this month, there's some really great scenes in it from that movie. So I'm excited to see what it looks like, to see how it goes.
Exactly. If you weren't hosting this podcast, what podcast would you be hosting?
don't know. That's a good question. There's so many options out there. But I think I do one about indie artists, try and find a platform for them, because there's a lot of great, talented people out there. And, they have all these podcasts talking to celebrities and their new movies coming out and all the cool stuff they do, which I recommend to listen to if you're a fan of that. But no one really highlights indie artists. And I feel like there should be a podcast out there that highlights indie artists and the hard work that they do and the way that they build themselves and how they carry themselves and share their experience to inspire others. It should be inspirational. I feel like it should be called Inspirations for Practical Applications and Entertainment. Maybe IPA Sessions. Yeah, IPA Sessions would be a podcast I'd host with a new episode out this Friday.
Today.
Sweet plug.
Also today.
Also today. Yeah, out today, actually. Yes, it's
out today.
The episode out today. When you're done listening to this, hop over to IPA. And I'll put one on IPA. When you're done listening to IPA, hop over here.
Yeah.
It's a fun time.
It'll be perfect for this weekend for Twisters. You'll be in one as you're spinning around all these podcasts.
It's good times. Good times. And I'm excited to announce that I am getting a film project together in the works to start doing some stuff with. And hopefully I'll have more information for you guys when I come on by the next time. I'll have some more details on that. But keep your eyes out. I might be doing something fun independently. Myself. That's right. Thanks for having me on.
We're Cinema D'Amore. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter to stay up to date with news and information on upcoming episodes. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Pandora, Alexa, or iHeartRadio. It would be greatly appreciated if you subscribe to our podcast on your platform of choice. We also appreciate feedback, so rate us, review us, and let us know what you think. And above all else, thank you for listening.